Hello all, welcome to Forest Biology. So today in this video we are going to look into the human physiology second chapter, that is body fluids and circulation. So let's quickly go through it. So blood is the most commonly used body fluid by most of the higher organisms including humans for this purpose. There is another body fluid called lymph which helps in the transport of certain substances. So what is blood? Blood is a special connective tissue consisting of a fluid matrix, plasma and formed elements. And what is plasma? Plasma is the straw colored viscous fluid constituting nearly 55% of the blood, whereas in that 90 to 92% of plasma is water and 6 to 8% is proteins. And there are which types of proteins? Fibrinogen, globulins and albumins. So what are these three uses, which is very important? It has been asked in PYQ also. Fibrinogens are needed for clotting or coagulation of blood. Globulins is involved in the defense mechanism, and albumin is which will help in osmotic balance. This is also important one, which is plasma without the clotting factors is called serum. Now we'll look into the formed elements. So the first formed element is erythrocytes. So there are erythrocyte, leukocyte and platelets which are together called as formed elements, and they constitute nearly 45% of the blood. Erythrocytes are also called as RBC and they are most abundant of all the cells in the blood. And on an average 5 millions to 5.5 millions of RBC is present in the blood, and this is formed in a bone marrow. And you have to know that RBCs are devoid of nucleus in most of the mammals and are in biconcave shape. So you should know this shape also. They have red colored iron containing pigment or protein which is called as hemoglobin. This number is very important. It has been asked in PYQ. So 12 to 16 grams of hemoglobin is present in every 100 ml of blood. So the lifespan of RBC is around 120 days and it is destroyed in the spleen. Spleen is also called as graveyard of RBCs. Next, moving on to leukocytes. Leukocytes are known as WBC and they are colorless due to lack of hemoglobin. They are nucleated. So RBC is not nucleated, this is nucleated, and are relatively less numbers, that is around 6,000 to 8,000. Then leukocytes are generally short-lived. In leukocytes, we have granulocytes and granulocytes. Granulocytes consist of neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, while lymphocytes and monocytes are agranulocytes. Next, neutrophils are the most abundant cells. So first is they will ask you the decreasing order or increasing order of this granulocytes and granulocytes. So neutrophils are the most abundant cells of the total WBC. Then basophils are the least. So neutrophil first, then lymphocytes, uh, neutrophils first, then lymphocytes, then monocytes, and later eosinophils and basophils. So neutrophils and monocytes are phagocytic cells which destroy the foreign organism entering the body. Basophils is used to secrete histamine, serotonin, heparin, and are used in inflammatory reactions. So eosinophils resist infections and are also um, associated with allergic reactions, whereas lymphocytes have two types again in lymphocytes, that is B and T. Though both are responsible for immune response of the body. So you can note down, you can look into this type diagram type. Next, moving on to platelets. Platelets are also called as thrombocytes. There are on an blood normally has 1,50,000 to 3,50,000 platelets. The coagulation or clotting of a blood is done by the platelets, and if the platelet number is reduced, it can lead to clotting disorders through which the blood will not be able to clot and excessive loss of blood happens. Next, moving on to blood groups. So there are two types basically, ABO and RH group. ABO is normal human blood group, which is based on the presence or absence of two surface antigens on the RBCs, namely A and B. So you should know this table, which is very important, and you should know that this is antigen is present on RBC and antibody is present on plasma. And O group is called universal donors. They can accept blood from anyone, whereas AB group is called O group is universal donor. They can donate blood to everyone, whereas AB is called universal recipient. They can accept blood from anyone. Next, moving on to RH grouping. This is similar to one present in rhesus monkeys, and its name is RH grouping. So this is observed on the surface of RBC of majority of humans. Such individuals are called Rh positive. If the antigen is absent, it is called as Rh negative. An Rh negative person, if exposed to Rh positive blood group, then there is some antibodies prepared against that Rh antigen. And there is a special case which is mentioned in the Ncert textbook regarding the Rh incompatibility. So when the Rh negative blood of a pregnant mother with Rh positive blood of the fetus is there, the Rh antigens of the fetus do not get exposed to the Rh negative blood of the mother in the first pregnancy, as the two bloods are well separated by the placenta. However, during the delivery of the first child, there is a possibility of exposure of the maternal blood to small amounts of the Rh positive blood from the fetus. In such cases, the mother starts preparing antibodies against the Rh antigen in her blood. In this case, in the subsequent pregnancies, the Rh antibodies from the mother, that is Rh negative, can leak into the blood of the fetus and destroy the fetal RBC. This condition is called erythroblastosis fetalis. This can be avoided by administering anti-Rh antibodies to the mother immediately after the delivery of the first child. So this is one special case. Next, moving on to the coagulation of blood. Blood exhibit coagulation or clotting in response to an injury or trauma. This is a mechanism to prevent excessive loss of blood from the body. So it is a clot or coagulum formed mainly of a network of threads called fibrins, in which dead and damaged formed elements of blood are trapped. These fibrins are formed by the conversion of inactive fibrinogens into in the plasma by the enzyme thrombin. So from fibrinogens to fibrin, the enzyme is thrombin. This thrombin in turn are formed from another inactive substance present in the plasma called prothrombin. So thrombin is formed from prothrombin. An enzyme complex thrombokinase is required for the above reaction. So this complex is formed by a series of linked enzymic reactions, that is cascade process, involving a number of factors present in the plasma in an inactive state. Here calcium ions play a very important role in blood clotting. Next, moving on to the lymph. Exchange of nutrients gases between the blood and the cells always occur through this fluid, which is called lymph. An elaborate network of vessels called the lymphatic system collects the fluid and drains it back to the major veins. This fluid present in the lymphatic system is called lymph. Lymph is a colorless fluid containing specialized lymphocytes which are responsible for the immune responses of the body, and lymph is also an important carrier for nutrients and hormones. Moving on to the circulatory pathway. So there are two types of pathway, that is open and closed. Open is present in arthropods, mollusks, in which the blood is pumped by the heart, passes through the large vessel into open spaces or body cavities called sinuses. Whereas in annelids and chordates, they have closed circulatory system in which the blood pumped by the heart is always circulated through a closed network of blood vessels. Next, fishes have two-chambered heart with atrium and ventricle. Amphibians and reptiles, except the crocodile, has three-chambered heart, whereas the crocodiles has four-chambered heart. Even the human has four-chambered heart. Next, moving on to the human circulatory system. This part is very important. Heart is mesodermally derived origin, as in notochord. This is situated in the thoracic cavity in between the two lungs, slightly tilted to the left. This is protected by double-walled membranous bag called pericardium, enclosing the pericardial fluid. So our heart has four chambers, that is atria and ventricles. The upper chambers are atria, lower chambers are ventricle, which is larger than atria. So there is a muscular wall between atria ventricle, atria atria, and ventricle ventricle. So between ventricle ventricle is called interventricular septum. Between atria atria is called interatrial septum, whereas between atria and ventricle is called atrioventricular septum. The opening between right atrium and right ventricle is called tricuspid valve, and the opening between left atrium and left ventricle is called bicuspid or mitral valve. The openings of the right and left ventricles is into the pulmonary artery and the aorta respectively. are provided with the semilunar vein. There are two more valves, that is semilunar valves. The valves in the heart allows the flow of blood only in one direction from the atria to ventricle and from ventricle to the pulmonary artery or aorta. Next, the entire heart is made up of cardiac muscles. Cardiac means heart, so cardiac muscles. The wall of the ventricle are much thicker than that of atria, so this is important. A specialized cardiac musculature called the nodal tissue is also distributed in the heart. Right upper corner of the right atrium has sinoatrial node, whereas lower left corner of the right atrium, close to the atrioventricular system septum, has the atrioventricular node AVN. So these branches give rise to minute fibers through the ventricular musculature of the respective sites and are called as Purkinje fibers. So the nodal musculature has the ability to generate action potentials without any external stimuli. That is, it is auto-excitable. The SAN, that is sinoatrial node, can generate the maximum number of action potential, that is 70 to 75 per minute, and is responsible for initiating and maintaining the rhythmic contractile activity of the heart. So our heart normally beats 70 to 75 times in a minute, and also the SAN is also called as natural pacemaker. So if this gets damaged, they have to use an artificial pacemaker, which will be installed or kept inside near to the heart. Next, cardiac cycle. As the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary veins and vena cava flows into left and right ventricle respectively through the left and right atria. This SAN generates an action potential which stimulates both the atria to undergo a simultaneous contraction, that is called atrial systole. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. The action potential is conducted to the ventricular side by the AVN and AV bundle, from where the bundle of hits transmit it through the entire ventricular musculature. So this causes the ventricular muscles to contract, which is called as ventricular systole. Then the atria undergoes relaxation, that is diastole, coinciding with the ventricular systole. Ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid wall due to attempt backflow of blood into the atria. As the ventricular pressure increases further, the semilunar valves guarding the pulmonary artery, the right side, and the aorta, the left side, are forced open, allowing the blood in the ventricles to flow through the vessels into the circulatory pathways. The ventricle will now relax and the ventricular pressure will fall, causing the closure of semilunar valves, which prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricle. As the ventricular pressure declines further, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve are pushed open by the pressure in the atria, and from the atria again it comes to the ventricles. The ventricles and the atria are now again relaxed, that is joint diastole. SAN generates a new action potential and the events described above are repeated in the same process. So this sequential event is called as cardiac cycle, which consists of systole, diastole of both atria and ventricles. So as mentioned earlier, the heart beats 72 times per minute. That means that many cardiac cycles are performed per minute. So the duration of cardiac cycle is around 0.8 seconds. During the cardiac cycle, each ventricle pumps out approximately 70 ml of the blood, which is called as stroke volume. So this is a prerequisite and a most probable question, that is the stroke volume into the number of beats per minute, that is heart rate, will give the cardiac output. The cardiac output can be defined as the volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute and averages 5000 ml or 5 liters in a healthy individual. There are two heart sounds associated. First one is lub and second one is dub. First one is of more sound and second of lesser sound. First one is due to the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valve, whereas second one is due to the closure of semilunar valves. Next, moving on to ECG, which is called as electrocardiograph. So this is a graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during the cardiac cycle. So this is the ECG. Here it is performed using three electric leads, one to the each wrist and one more to the left ankle. So there are different alphabets which are denoted to it. The P wave represents the electrical excitation or depolarization of atria. QRS is depolarization of ventricles and T wave is repolarization of ventricles. So the number of QRS complex that occur in a given time period one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. Next, moving on to double circulation. Each artery and vein consists of three layers: an inner lining of squamous endothelium, the tunica intima. Intima means inner. Middle layer is of smooth muscle and elastic fiber, that is tunica media, and external layer is of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers, that is tunica externa. So the tunica media is comparatively thin in veins. So the blood pumped by the right ventricle enters into the pulmonary artery, whereas left ventricles pump the blood to the aorta. And this deoxygenated blood pumped into the pulmonary artery is passed on to the lungs, from where the oxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. This pathway constitutes the pulmonary circulation. So there are two circulation, which is pulmonary and systematic. So this one is pulmonary. Next one, the oxygenated blood entering the aorta is carried by a network of arteries, arterioles and capillaries to the tissues, from where the deoxygenated blood is collected by a system of venules, veins and vena cava, and this is emptied into a right atrium. This is called a systemic circulation. A unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract and liver, which is called as hepatic portal system. So the hepatic portal vein carries blood from an intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systematic circulation. And this diagram is very much important. They may ask you to label this also. So please go through this diagram. Moving on to the regulation of cardiac activity. Normal activities of the heart are regularly intrinsically, that is auto-regulated by specialized muscle. Hence the heart is called as myogenic heart. Sympathetic nerves, that is the part of ANS, autonomic nervous system, can increase the rate of heartbeat, which thereby the strength of the ventricular contraction and thereby the cardiac output. All these are increased, whereas parasympathetic neural signal decrease the rate of heartbeat, speed of conduction and the cardiac output. So the disorders of each and every chapter in the human physiology is very much important. So the disorder of the heart almost is given here, that is high blood pressure, that is hypertension. The normal range is 120 by 80. If it is above 140 by 90 or 140 by 90, it is it will lead to a heart disease, which also affects vital organs like brain and kidney. Next is coronary artery diseases. This is often referred as atherosclerosis, that affects the vessels that supply blood to the heart muscle, and it is caused due to deposition of calcium, fat, cholesterol, fiber tissues, which make the lumen of the arteries narrower. Next is angina, which is also called as angina pectoris. This is a symptom of acute chest pain which appears when there is no enough oxygen reaching the heart muscle. The next one is heart failure. In this is very much important because there is a confusion in between three, that is cardiac arrest, heart failure, and heart attack. So let me first tell you, the cardiac arrest is when the heart stops beating. Arrest stops. Heart attack is when the heart muscle is suddenly damaged by inadequate supply of blood. So these two are very important. It is a PYQ and a most probable question also. Heart failure means the state of heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. It is sometimes called congestive heart failure because congestion of lung is one of the main symptoms of this disease. So this is all about this chapter, body fluids and circulation. We'll make a video on the next chapter soon. So please like, share and subscribe so that you don't miss out any notification, and thank you all. Thank you.